Welcome into the Max Browne Show. On this week's episode, we're talking why Jayden Daniels owes Lamar Jackson, how can we fix Clemson and what's going on over there, how CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams are going to change a football narrative, and then I'll give you my thoughts on two big picture topics. One, relegation in college football. You're used to hearing that in soccer, out in Europe and whatnot. No, we're talking relegation in college football and why that would be the best thing ever for this sport. And then I'll also give you my thoughts on Tom Brady transitioning from the gridiron into the booth, and not just easing his way in. He's going right to the #1 slot on Fox next football season, which is no joke. And not that I can relate to his playing experience, but I can relate to the transition from the playing days into the booth. And while the greats make it look easy, it's far from it. But before we dive into the meat of this show, again, this is the Max Browne Show, a long-form deliverable. We're carrying on the momentum we built from the football season on the short-form side, which a bunch of you guys have been loving. It's been fun building that community. We're going on the long-form side, and I'm doing it for a couple reasons. The first is your boy's a free agent. The network that I've worked for in the fall, the Pac-12 Network, that's dissolving. And so I thought, what better time than now to build out a long-form show, not only to stay engaged and stay active, but also to build a community and build my own platform, because that is where the sports industry is heading. It's already heading there. We've seen it with a ton of big presences in the sports world, whether it's Pat McAfee, whether it's Dan Orlovsky. They started their career, yes, they had great playing careers, but they started their career on the digital side and then blended that into more professional gigs. That is certainly a blueprint that I get inspiration from. And I also think just the industry in general is going to value digital content and digital creators more. I know for me, gone are the days of watching hour-long SportsCenter episodes. Unless it's like SVP or something after Monday night, Sunday Night Football, those days are over. For me at lunch, I'm on YouTube, on various short-form platforms, looking at specific concepts that I want to digest that topic. And yes, the mainstream networks, they hit the A-level content, but there's a huge market for that secondary content as well. I view that secondary content as more niche, right? I'm talking about Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud today. I'm talking about how to fix Clemson. Those little nuggets that, hey, true football hardos, you'll enjoy. That's sweet. Stay a little while, hang out, that's awesome. But it might be too niche for the mainstream networks. That's okay. Let them have the A-level content. We're getting creative out here, which is why I hope you guys find value from this episode. And that's why I hope you come back every single Thursday for the Max Browne Show. And without further ado, let's dive into it. It's time we make college football more American by making it more European. This is not like the arguments you've heard before for promotion and relegation in college football. To start, most folks forget to define the terms. Promotion and relegation is a process by which teams can move up and down different divisions in a hierarchical structure based upon their performance in a given season. European soccer does it the best. If you win your league, you have the option to go up. Teams are incentivized to move up because the higher you go in the hierarchy, the larger the checks are because of the TV deals associated with the teams in that league. So even if you think you're going to be fighting for dear life to stay in that higher league, you'll do so in the off chance that you can string enough big checks together across enough seasons in a row to ultimately move up to the next league. It's beautiful. It's pull yourself up by the bootstrap stuff. It's, dare I say, American. But another reason this isn't like any other argument you've heard for promotion and relegation in college football is because I'm going to tell you straight up, this is not going to happen in America. Let me revise that. There's a 99.99% chance that this does not happen in college football. We would need a central power, a conference commissioner, and the current conference commissioners won't let that happen. We would need everyone to be incentivized to come together. The conference commissioners, the athletic directors, the TV network executives, hey, even the athletes themselves. It's essentially a fantasy, but it would be the best thing that could happen to college football. So what does that 0.01% look like? And what would bring those parties to the table? Well, ironically, to start, the gap between the haves and the have-nots would have to get even bigger. In the 2024 recruiting class, 27 of the 32 five-stars committed to either a Big Ten or an SEC school. 78 of the top 100 prospects are committed to the same two conferences. The top 8 teams in the futures markets to win the national championship in 2024 are part of the Big Ten or the SEC, and that goes for 15 of the top 18. In the fiscal year 2022, Louisiana Lafayette's football program reported revenue of $4.7 million that year. Texas's football program reported a revenue of $182 $22.9 million. Both of those teams compete for the same trophy. So the gap is already huge, but let's say the balance of power continues to shift towards the Big Ten and the SEC. And what if it doesn't stop? That will likely make a lot of the TV inventory decrease in value. For example, who's going to want to watch a 7-4 Arizona State team play a 4-7 Iowa State game when the average Saturday you're used to seeing USC, Alabama, and Ohio State matchup? That Arizona State-Iowa State game would have been a solid Saturday night watch. Now it just would be increasingly irrelevant. Ratings for the blue blood programs will increase, but ratings across the board will dip, interest in the sport will decrease, and most importantly, everybody's pockets will start to hurt until we install promotion and relegation. Now that somewhat random ASU-Iowa State game has stakes that couldn't be higher as the Cyclones try to play their way into staying in their division. Now that relatively random matchup is considered must-watch TV for football fans. But what would this whole process even look like, and how would we get it organized? This is how. At top, we start with that Power 2 of the Big Ten and the SEC. This gives us a group of 36 teams at the top. Next level down is everybody else in the Power 5. 29 teams at this level as things stand today, and I like to make it even 36 like the other league, so I'm bringing up 7 teams from the league below. That leaves us with 54 group of 5 teams at the third level. The fourth level is the whole FCS. This is why it's a pyramid. You start to see the number of teams increase as we decrease in level of play. There's 128 teams at this level. The fifth level is Division 2 with 162 programs. And finally, the lowest level of the pyramid is Division 3 with 243 programs. You see, the whole system as it stands today fits pretty well in a pyramid. I really believe college football is the only American sport where there's a better than 0% chance of this happening. And this would be the best thing for American sports since football was invented. I think about all those little towns in Europe and say, oh, we're pretty crazy about our team. And our initial reaction is like, oh, that's cute. They must have a nice minor league baseball equivalent stadium and they get together and support the boys. When in reality, it's teams like Burnley, population 73,000, stadium size 22,000. Bournemouth, population 187,000, stadium size 11,300. Hoffenheim, population 3,200, stadium capacity 30,150. And if that sounds familiar, it's because we have places in our sport like Eugene, population 175,000, stadium size 54,000. Pullman, Washington, population 32,827, stadium capacity 32,950. Ames, population 66,400, stadium capacity 61,500. By instituting this system, you give every college town in America hope. Hope that if you make the sacrifices to succeed, they'll be rewarded. What's more American than that?
Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. Coach Swinney's got that drip, and now he's on TikTok.
Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. Coach Swinney slipped a bit, but how does he get back to the top? The 12-team college football playoff era is here, and nobody needs this reset more than Dabo Swinney and Clemson. Only a few years ago, we looked at the Clemson Tigers as a dynasty. From 2015 to 2020, they made 6 straight national championship games. They won 2 natties and only lost once in the regular season 3 times. During that time period, they were on par with, if not just below, the Alabama standard. There's not a lot of people out there saying that. But in 2023, Clemson started 4-4 and failed to win 10 games for the first time in 12 years. What happened and where do the Tigers go from here? The take you hear all the time is that Dabo's been slow to accept the transfer portal as a way to build your roster, and as a result, that's why the Clemson dynasty is deteriorating. Well, that's true, but it's not that simple. Dabo has not been very active in the portal. In 2022, he got 1 player. In 2023, he got 1 player. And so far in 2024, he has 0 players out of the portal. For reference, Colorado has 23 dudes out of the portal so far in 2024. Dabo's reluctance to use the transfer portal comes from the belief that recruiting and developing talent is the only way to build a winning culture within a program. Big picture, I mean, he's right, but winning programs have also figured out that you can supplement that winning culture by bringing in transfers as well. Of the top 35 guys on the 2 teams that played for the national championship last season, Michigan had 27 dudes that were recruited out of high school and 8 transfers that came in. Washington also had 27 guys that were recruited out of high school to the roster and 8 transfers come in. Dabo's winning culture argument also falls flat when conference rival Florida State comes into Death Valley with 3 transfer portal receivers that put up 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 31-20 win over Clemson. But just because Dabo's hesitant to use the portal doesn't mean that that's the whole story. Clemson actually wasn't able to close with at least 5 players out of the portal since 2021. Which brings us to another issue at Clemson, their NIL philosophy. Clemson's NIL dollars seem to be there from all accounts. What's holding them back back is how they're choosing to deploy those NIL dollars. They use NIL to pay players on their current roster, and it's kept far away from any recruiting pitch. Again, the concern is how will it impact culture? In an era where other teams are hiring general managers and developing strategies around how much to spend at which positions, this is a weight that Dabo is tying around the program's ankle. All this, and I still like the 2024 Clemson Tigers. Despite what the trolls tell you, Garrett Riley can coach. He's got Cade Klubnik back for the second year as his full-time starter, and he's got leading rusher back Phil Maffa as well. Another playmaker needs to emerge from the guys that they recruited. Dabo's development philosophy has to play out in the receiver room. Between Troy Stellato, Adam Randall, and Antonio Williams, somebody needs to emerge as a clear-cut number one. But what I don't like about the 2024 Clemson Tigers is their schedule. They open with the likely preseason number one team Georgia in Atlanta. Their first conference game is against NC State, who beat them in 2023. Then in the 6th week of the season, they play Florida State in Tallahassee. Clemson needs one of those games to stay in playoff contention. The rest of the way, their toughest matchup is Louisville, but the Cards have to come to Death Valley. So we have this team with systemic issues that's hurting their ability to use a key roster building tool with a solid current roster and a tough schedule. Even with that, I have a hard time betting against Dabo Swinney and Garrett Riley figuring it out. Ultimately, Dabo comes from the Saban tree, and with every Saban guy, we know the deal. It's about process, not results. Saban was successful because he was unemotional and downright stoic about what it took to win. He tried to avoid wasting time on how things were supposed to be. He saw spread offenses kill his offensive philosophy, so he adapted. And then he saw adaptability as the key factor a defense can have, and so he changed the way he recruited. Sure, he might let the media know he didn't like it, but Saban still made the necessary changes based on what works. Eventually, if he's honest with himself, Dabo will see how his philosophy around NIL and the transfer portal is hurting his team, and he'll adjust. If he doesn't, we might see a football dynasty deteriorate the same way Ernest Hemingway described going bankrupt. Gradually, and then all at once. Jayden Daniels owes Lamar Jackson a thank you card come May. As the draft season is fast approaching, or we're in it right now. After the Super Bowl, we're in draft season. And it got me thinking just how far both the football world and the quarterback world have come when it comes to just evaluating quarterbacks. 6-7 years ago, Lamar Jackson, who was the most electrifying player in all of football, both college and NFL, had a Heisman Trophy, had the stats, had the film, had everything behind him, found a way to slip to the end of the first round. Yet now we're at a point where Jayden Daniels, who has very similar numbers, finds himself as it feels like a consensus top 5 pick nowadays. Maybe consensus might be a stretch. There's teams going both ways, but a guy that's consensus top half of the first round. That's coming a long ways, and I'm going to unpack it. I'm not saying Jayden has the same exact skill set as Lamar, but I am saying they have comparable stats, and I am saying they have comparable measurables. The thin frame, that was a concern with Lamar Jackson. Some of you got to get stronger, got to get more accurate, those types of things. Those were concerns that Lamar had to deal with, and Jayden's got similar concerns. The accuracy is not as much of a thing for Jayden as me, but the concerns around, he's got to protect himself as a runner. Well, that was a concern for Lamar, and it's maybe a reason why he dropped towards the end of the first round. But now we're to a point in the game of football where that concern, yes, it's a factor. Yes, it's something you have to evaluate, but it's not deterring teams away from getting the dual threat quarterback. So let's explore that a little bit. Why would Lamar Jackson slide to 32 6-7 years ago? And there's no way. We all know it. There is no way Lamar Jackson in this year's draft coming out of college would slide outside the top 10. There's no way. So let's explore that path in the quarterback position and how we got here, and who does Jayden Daniels need to write some thank you cards to. This whole thing starts with Mike Vick. When Mike Vick started in the NFL, Jim Mora was his head coach, and Jim Mora tried to fit him into that pro-style offense because that's what everyone ran. You're coming off the back of the West Coast offense. That is NFL football. This is how we do it. I don't care how athletic you are, you're fitting into this system. And Mike Vick was talented enough to get away with that because he could operate from the pocket, and we saw that throughout his career. But the West Coast offense, it was built on short ball control passes. It was built all on rhythm and timing. It was built around a quarterback who knew where to go with the ball, who could play point guard. And it was not built around a lot of the traits that Mike Vick had. The elite athleticism, the mind-blowing arm strength. Yes, that certainly helped back then, but it was way more timing oriented. The arm strength wasn't as significant of a factor. If you could run all over the field at the quarterback position, didn't really matter because it's not even in the offensive playbook. Zone read literally was not a thing, or probably was a thing with Chip Kelly way up in New Hampshire at that point. But in NFL football, no, that's rinky-dink football. We're not doing that. The fact that he could improvise, of course, that's why he went as high as he did. Like that's always going to be attractive at the quarterback position, moving within the pocket. And then there was concerns early on with Mike Vick, the longer release, right? Where you got so locked into what the prototype quarterback should be, you sometimes lost track of the fact that, yo, can you ball or can you not? And then when you progress in Mike Vick's career, he got with Andy Reid. And we all know that there was a lapse there that Mike Vick, wasn't playing football. And at the age of 30, in 2010, he was able to go 62% completion percentage, 151 yards a game. This is the stat that sticks out the most. 21 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions in 12 games. Was able to resurrect his career that 1 year in Philly. It's worth noting, though, his performance did decline the next 2 years in Andy Reid's offense. But Mike Vick proved some things. He proved a lot to a large quantity of people. He proved that it wasn't about fitting the player into the system, but it was about fitting the system into the player. And that started to change the narrative around what a quarterback should be. It's not, hey, you got to be able to do this or you can't play at all. No, it's, hey, coach, it's on you to put the plays in the playbook that you know guys are going to have success. The next thing, Mike Vick showed that a high volume of carries for quarterbacks wasn't a death sentence. It wasn't a negative. You could put that weight on a quarterback and still have him both survive a season, but more importantly, absolutely change a game. That was the starting point. He didn't convince everyone. As we're going to get into, that was still the narrative for the next decade. But Mike Vick started to crack the door open. And then even more bigger picture, Mike Vick showed and got a lot of people excited that, hey, this dual threat quarterback thing, this is pretty fun. We can do some stuff with this dual threat quarterback. It gets all the offensive coordinators, all the guys like me, younger dudes in their 20s with a whiteboard, all of the creative juices starting to flow. Maybe it's because of the dang Madden controller. People playing Madden like this guy's an absolute cheat code. How do we get more Mike Vicks in the game? Mike Vick started this narrative, or I guess reverting the narratives that had been started at the quarterback position, but it wasn't done yet. It would still take guys to follow to completely break it down. We have, in the years to come, you have Cam Newton, you got Colin Kaepernick, you have Robert Griffin III, you have Tim Tebow, and I don't want to do those other guys a disservice. Let's go back even before Mike Vick. Honorable mentions: Randall Cunningham, Dante Culpepper, Steve McNair, Donovan McNabb, Vince Young, all guys that slowly chipped away at this narrative. And that last batch of guys, they fell into the, hey, you got to be in the West Coast system. The Cam Newtons, the Kaepernicks, the RG3s, the Tim Tebows, that's the wave of, all right, we're putting our system around these quarterbacks. This guy is too good of a football player. Don't even say quarterback. This dude's too good of a football player. We got to build our system around this dude rather than the other way around. And this part, as I really started to break this down, the guy that really was the turning point, and this almost like surprised me as I fully flushed out this thought, was Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was the guy where he had success early on in his career. And you're sitting there like, wait a sec. This dude can do everything from a mobility perspective and you get the passing stuff. Before that, it was kind of a trade-off. It was like, hey, you either get the mobility stuff or you get the passing stuff. With Russell Wilson, it got to the point of like, wait, no, we can have our cake and eat it too. We can do both things. And then also, he got to a point with the measurables with Russell Wilson where you're sitting there saying, yo, is this whole 6'5" pocket passer thing, like, is that actually what we need to have? Like, why can't Russell Wilson play at a high, like, when we're evaluating quarterbacks, is 6'5", you just have to be that? No, the game's much more wide open. The game gets more athletic, so you need an athlete back there, and Russell Wilson's height is not as big of a concern because height is just that versus the strength that he brings to the table, the mobility, the ability to navigate in the pocket, absolute nightmare for defensive coordinators on third down. That's what Russell Wilson brought to the table. And as a Seattle Seahawks fan, the narrative that Russell Wilson changed as well is the concern around, can mobile quarterbacks protect themselves? Russell Wilson did a phenomenal job at protecting himself. He would run and he'd get down. He'd run, he'd get out of bounds. It wasn't necessarily the run, juke a bunch of guys out and then get hit, which is what happened with an RG3, which is what happened with a Cam Newton, which is what happened to a degree with Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick wasn't taking hits all the time, but much more design runs versus Russell Wilson was, hey, we can call our whole passing attack, and then when it's open, Russell can run and protect himself. That's the narrative that Russell Wilson changed the most, in my opinion. In that time frame with Russell Wilson, though, we'd be doing this video a disservice if we did not acknowledge the fact that the quarterback rule changes are a big factor. The more protections for the quarterback, which Hey, I'm sure Mike Vick looks at the game nowadays saying, hey, if I could get all that protection and if that defender is just slowing up just a tad, maybe I'm able to be even more explosive. And with that last wave of rule changes that took place to protect the quarterback, of the top 10 single season QB rushing attempts list, 8 have come since 2017. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's a factor of a lot of these factors, but the rules of protecting quarterbacks are certainly significant. And then the next wave of quarterbacks after Russell, they continued to change the narrative around the quarterback position. A lot of these guys weren't as dynamic as the bunch I just listed out, but they weren't part of the prototype of what the quarterback was supposed to be when Mike Vick was playing. We're talking guys like Baker Mayfield, guys like Kyler Murray, guys like Jalen Hurts, guys like Josh Allen. Josh Allen had best of both worlds, right? Huge quarterback, has that prototype size, but his style, at least come into the game, was different. And then that's where we get to Lamar Jackson. And he was drafted in a time where Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Josh Rosen went ahead of him. There is no way in today's era Josh Rosen goes ahead of Lamar Jackson. There's just no way. And Lamar really finalized the mindset that, hey, not only can you win with a dual threat quarterback, but nowadays you have to have an element of mobility to be considered a top-end guy. Even a guy like Joe Burrow, you know, my long-lost brother, he has that pocket mobility. I always say from a personal standpoint, I was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. I don't think I would have been a 5-star rated quarterback in today's college football world because I wasn't mobile enough. I wouldn't be viewed as, again, that prototype quarterback that's able to stand tall under the pocket. No, you have to have that next level mobility component, which that is the final piece that Lamar broke through, which is why Jayden Daniels is able to be at a point that he's at right now where he is considered a top 5 NFL quarterback. And again, let me be very clear that I don't think Jayden Daniels is as electrifying of a prospect as Lamar Jackson. Lamar is next level in terms of his ability to run, but Jayden has some of those components. When you look at a guy like Lamar, I view it as he's a dynamic athlete no matter what human being you put on the field with him. Jayden Daniels, on the other hand, he has elite athleticism and he will make guys without elite athleticism look silly. But my biggest thing that I would look for if I'm a GM is, will that athleticism be a difference-making factor when there's other elite athletes around him on the football field like there will be in the National Football League? To say it a different way, is he just taking advantage of his athleticism at a level of play in college football where not every athlete is overly dynamic? And then when he gets to the NFL where defensive ends are running 4.5s and linebackers are running 4.5s as well, and they're able to run with him, and does that elite athleticism get neutralized? That hasn't been the case for Lamar. Obviously, it's not as easy to juke guys out in the NFL as there is in college, but Lamar's athleticism is a factor against anyone he plays, period. As a GM, you got to assess if that same thing applies for Jayden Daniels. College stat-wise, I won't run through them all, but it's very comparable. Yards per game, total yards from both a run and pass standpoint, the passing touchdowns. Jayden Daniels has actually been better in his Heisman campaign, but Lamar's got more rushing touchdowns. Hence why this isn't a controversial take, why I think he's more dynamic on the ground. When we look at differences in their draft evaluations from an arm strength standpoint, I would say Lamar was, hey, huge arm, ability to have that big time velocity, and Jayden is, hey, he's got a good arm, right? That's not a concern, but it's not that huge arm. Accuracy-wise, there was concerns around Lamar's mechanics a little bit and some of the accuracy concerns, this footwork and whatnot. And with Jayden, it's, hey, a very polished passer, especially with the downfield accuracy. And I just mentioned it. Footwork-wise, Jayden's a bit more polished. Lamar was more of an athlete mode. I would say you could even go, hey, poor footwork, which then, hey, that leads to the inaccuracy that sometimes he brings to the table. The similarities with the draft, the running concerns, right? Are they able to protect themselves with how mobile they are given the frame they have? The athleticism, we've talked about it in the levels that come with that. And then the pocket presence. Lamar was much more of a, hey, he utilizes his athleticism in the pocket and can feel things really well without taking his eyes down. Jayden, I would say, is very similar. And so that gives you a rundown of how we got here, which maybe that's just me. Drop a comment down below if you find that interesting, of that trajectory really over the past 20 years. Right? That's the draft that Mike Vick went in, and here we are, 20 years to really transform how we view the quarterback position, which factors that we put the utmost importance in. And then, hey, just 6 years ago, the question was, can you really build a franchise around a guy who's who's mobile. To now the question is, how can you not? And check this out. Lamar's signing bonus was $4.9 million in 2018. Jayden, if he goes to the Patriots like many expect, his signing bonus is going to be $23 million. That's a 6-year gap. That's it. 6 years. I've been done playing football for 6 years. That gap is worth $18 million. Jayden Daniels, you better get out some thank you cards and start writing to all these dudes I just listed. Tom Brady won his first Super Bowl the day after I turned 7 years old, and he's going to start his broadcasting career 6 years after I did. And that's all to say, I know there's a huge difference between him and I, even though we're both technically former quarterbacks, now broadcasters. That being said, as somebody who got their opportunity to call games by being a quarterback at USC and Pitt, I do think I can offer some perspective about what that transition is like. It's different than what other creators can say. Tom Brady is the GOAT when it comes to quarterback playing on the field, but can he become the GOAT in the booth as well? Let's first set the stage by outlining how much Fox is betting on Tom Brady's success as a broadcaster. Betting so much in the range of $37.5 million annually for a dude that has never called a football game. That's a $375 million contract over 10 years. And that's not even the start of it. That contract went into place while he was still a Buccaneer, still playing football. That's absurd. They let Troy Aikman and Joe Buck walk, two of the most respected broadcasters, one of the most respected duos in football broadcasting. They said, all right, peace. We got another dude coming in the pipeline. And then 3, and this is almost like the funniest one. They told Greg Olsen, yeah, you're a great broadcaster. He's their #1 dude. The dude's calling a Super Bowl. He said, yeah, you can keep Tom Brady's seat warm until he's ready to get in the booth. That is crazy. But that shows you how much they are investing in Tom Brady's success and how much Tom Brady's brand, reputation, and his legacy, how much value that has in the football world. But let's get it straight. Tom Brady's success is going to come down to 3 factors. 1, his play-by-play partner. Who's he paired up with? Obviously, he's going to be paired up with an absolute pro, but you see it sometimes. Sometimes personalities don't mesh. Sometimes it's stiff in the booth. And then on the flip side, sometimes the personalities are great. As I'm saying that out loud, the TNT crew for basketball, Shaq, Chuck, Kenny, they crush it all the time. How will those personalities gel? 2, how will Tom Brady adjust as a former player? It's just different wearing a helmet versus wearing a suit. It's just different up there. It's a different skill set. You see it all the time. Dudes that weren't necessarily the best players. Dan Orlovsky, he had a way better NFL career than I ever did, so who am I to say anything? But relative to the other quarterbacks in that era, he is by far and away one of the most successful broadcasters today, but he didn't necessarily have one of the most successful football careers back in the day. And then 3, for Tom Brady, what's his attention to detail like? Which I can't even believe I'm saying that because Tom Brady has prided himself and made a career off of fine-tuning every last detail, but you see it all the time. Sometimes former players mail it in and they don't prep to the level that they should. And sometimes they get exposed out there. Don't think that'll happen to Tom Brady, but those to me are the 3 key factors. So the first item of business, who's going to be Tom Brady's partner in the booth? And from firsthand experience, a play-by-play guy can make or break your experience in the booth. The great play-by-play guys, they keep it light in the booth. They're always mindful of teeing you up in scenarios where you know you can offer insight. And to me, this is almost the biggest thing. There's that banter in the booth where there isn't that guard up from either side, from Tom or his play-by-play guy. And they almost invite that. They almost want that. One of the best pieces of advice I got as a color commentator is the viewer on the other side of the screen from you should walk away from that broadcast being like, yo, I'd love to have a beer with Tom Brady. And obviously everyone would love to have a beer with Tom Brady, but in terms of that personality component. And when we go down the list of other former big time quarterbacks that have had success transitioning from huge playing careers into the booth being big time color guys, first name that sticks out, Phil Simms, still on the TV screen, not calling games, now in the studio. His partners, Greg Gumbel, a pro, Jim Nance, a pro, was with CBS and was their #1 dude for 20 years until I believe Tony Romo took his seat. The second one, Troy Aikman. We just talked about him. I love listening to Troy. I think Troy has a big game voice. It's sometimes a term you hear. Like when Troy's calling a game, it just feels like a big time game. I think he meshes his football knowledge in a way that's very digestible and concise and never gets too long-winded, and he combines it well with just some of the personality nuggets as well. So I'm a big fan of Troy. You also got Peyton Manning. He's having success, not necessarily in your traditional color commentary role, but he founded his own media company. The Manning Cast is crushing it. And what Peyton Manning's done the best is his personality shines through. The personality that we saw in his interviews have come through as a color commentator, and I think he's done done a great job. And then Greg Olsen, with Greg, one of the most impressive things for me is he got his start in a bye week while he was playing for the Panthers. So even if you're an aspiring broadcaster watching this, just like the entrepreneurial spirit to be thinking ahead and get that gig, like his timing, like who knows where he'd be at if him and Tom Brady like retired at the same time. Like he had a window right here where if he had waited a couple years, he might not be at the level that he's at. He was proactive with that, which I always respect, because in football color commentating, there's only so many games to go around. In basketball, there's tons of games. Baseball, there's tons of games, 162 a year. With football, there's only so many seats at the table. Greg Olsen, the fact that he's climbed to a point where he is the #1 dude and a stud at doing it, and a non-quarterback, don't sleep on that. And a non-quarterback, it's hard to be an elite color commentator as a non-quarterback because when you were playing, you weren't asked to know everything. The fact that he's a tight end, obviously he had a huge playing career and knows a ton, but the fact that he was able to do that shows just a ton of talent. I think Greg Olsen, he ain't going anywhere. But yeah, a play-by-play guy is huge. Two dudes in my personal career that stand out. Ari Wolf, he was the first play-by-play guy I ever had when calling UAB at Louisiana Tech. It was a double OT thriller. It was the first time I ever put on the suit and was in the booth. One thing I'll always respect and appreciate of him, he went out of his way to look out for me, to make sure that I was prepped in between commercial breaks, ahead of the game, tell me more like the logistical stuff, which I think will be a huge factor that Tom Brady will have to navigate. Things that you don't even realize when you're at home sitting on your couch. Like Ari went out of his way to look out for me. And then JB Long, he's been my partner for most of the past few years calling Pac-12 games. I always respect and appreciate how he'll ask me how he's doing, or can he do anything better? Can he tee me up in a better way? He's always texting during the week to make sure we're on the same page. I think he embraces that banter back and forth too, which I think makes for the best gig, the best television when you have that back and forth. And I always will appreciate both those guys and hope I'll work with them both down the road. But with all the guys that crushed it in terms of transitioning into the booth, there's also dudes that did not do so hot. Running down a few of the names, Joe Montana. I've honestly never even heard an interview of Joe Montana. Maybe outside of the Notre Dame halftime interviews. I really don't even know what Joe Montana sounds like on camera. And it's funny because for a while there, you compared Tom Brady and Joe Montana on the field. You would think that with all these names, the Phil Simms of the world, the Troy Aikmans of the world, that Joe Montana would just, fall right in line with that. But it hasn't happened. Hey, guess it wasn't for Joe. Did one season in 1995 and 1996 for NBC. One of his partners was Mike Ditka, though. That'd be good television. Joe Montana, Mike Ditka. But hey, didn't work out. Also didn't work out for Jerry Rice. Was 2 years as an in-studio analyst for ESPN in 2009 through 2011. And Jerry Rice said, no, I'm good here. Joe Namath, same deal, right? Joe Montana, Joe Namath, you go Tom Brady, like the GOATs. Joe Namath just seems like, too cool for school, but only lasted one season as the color commentator for Monday Night Football in 1985. Get this though, one of his broadcast partners, O.J. Simpson. Again, that's gnarly, but I'm sure that people tuned in. And then most recently, and this one almost kind of makes me feel bad, but Drew Brees didn't work out. And he seems like a stud. He seems like a great chat, great dude, great hang, but on the Notre Dame broadcast, that was just a weird broadcast year. And hey, what honestly jumps out is Drew Brees, he got really thrown into the fire, and he goes straight from playing right into the broadcasting side. And it takes some games to get reps under your belt, to get comfortable, and to have Notre Dame front and center, whole college football world's watching. Tom Brady's going to have even more attention than that. And for whatever reason, it just never meshed well for Drew Brees there. He signed that multi-year deal with NBC, and his partner was Mike Tirico. He's an absolute pro, but I believe they mutually agreed to just, go their separate ways. And I also think that's a byproduct of embarking in a profession that is very public in the social media age. And that to me would be a top concern for Tom Brady. Not that he won't be good down the road, but he's going to be under a microscope to start. And people are going to be looking at Tom of, hey, is it the same Tom we're used to seeing behind the mic? And if he's stiff at all, people are going to come at him. But let's unpack Tom's situation a little bit. So Greg Olsen and Kevin Burkhardt are in their final season as the top crew for Fox. They could stay together, or everything you read thinks that Tom Brady is going to be paired with Kevin Burkhardt, and then we'll see what happens with Greg Olsen. He mentioned he wanted to interview for the Panthers head coaching job. Greg Olsen's going to have options. If he wants to be in broadcasting, he'll be just fine. If it's not Kevin Burkhardt for Tom Brady, the other guy it could be is Joe Davis. Joe Davis currently paired with Daryl Moose Johnson. And it's funny, Joe kind of looks like Tom Brady, which that would just be kind of funny on camera. And the other side, if I'm Fox, the angle that could play is Tom Brady and Joe Davis, both younger guys, relatively speaking. They could really climb together in the industry. As I say that, it reminds me of a Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. That could be one of those pairs 20 years from now that we're saying, you know what, this duo thought they could be something, and then they really leveled up. But if you're a betting man, it's probably Kevin Burkhardt. And if you're betting man, Tom Brady's going to have success. But if he doesn't, some of the factors that jump out to me are, one, if it just doesn't go smoothly in those first few games. We talked about that with Drew Brees. It felt like those first few games were kind of awkward. You get this negative storm on Twitter, and then before you know it, it's like, wait, this is Drew Brees we're talking about. Like, is it what? How did it get to this point? And then at that point, it's like, I'm out of here. And that could only happen is if Tom Brady, he's stiff early on, or he's not smooth, and then the stakes are really high. And I can't believe I'm even saying that about Tom Brady, because he's like literally one of the most clutch athletes ever. But that can happen. It's a different realm playing quarterback than being in the booth. Other couple factors, he's become an owner. He tried to buy a minority stake in the Raiders. That's always on his mind. That would just be a unique balance. Sports ownership and big time color commentator. He also has his clothing brand that was recently merged with Noble. You know, he's got other things out there, and he mentioned when he retired that he was looking forward to allocate that time towards his businesses. And so for whatever reason, he's not prepping to that level on Sundays, which again, this is not going to happen. The prep is not going to be a thing with Tom Brady, but it's at least a factor that we need to bring up. One thing that is real though on the prep side is when you're close to the NFL, which Tom Brady is, the prep, you don't need as much because you know a lot of the players in the league. And so it's very easy to have that be a crutch of, hey, I know so-and-so running back. Hey, I remember when this dude was drafted to my team. Hey, I've been following this guy's career. And you have those nuggets. The more you get removed, the harder it is to stay on the beat of the sport, which is another reason that I wanted to do this show, to keep me on track, force me to break down things, force me to do a whole segment on Tom Brady's broadcasting contract. So when I get asked about it, I know that. Another segment in this show is about Clemson. That's prep that I wouldn't have done without this show. And it's a result of me getting further and further removed from my playing days. You gotta stay up on that prep. But I think Tom Brady will. I'm betting on Tom Brady's competitive spirit. He's not going to want to be the guy that's mailing it in. That's just not who his identity is. His identity is being the GOAT on the field. And to me, to be the GOAT as a broadcaster, the key difference, in my opinion, with color commentators who are elite versus color commentators who are average. Elite color commentators talk in a way where they're forward thinking. They're not always saying what just happened. Oh, that was a carry to the left for 7 yards. Ooh, that carry happened because it was a toss sweep and boom, 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 boom. No, they're saying, hey, that toss sweep is going to open up the reverse pass or the double reverse, or that toss sweep is going to open up this pass concept because the defense is overplaying. They're talking in that forward thinking lens, which one is just more interesting. It's definitely more insightful. And it just is, it's more engaging rather than just repeating exactly what I heard on the screen. So that is to me always the key factor when trying to analyze what big time color commentators do versus what are maybe the guys just kind of mailing it in on their prep or don't have that knowledge base like I think Tom Brady will to really tap into. When looking at Tom Brady and the biggest adjustments he's going to have, and these are just from, firsthand experience for me. One, it's so easy to over prep, and any interview, I heard Tom Brady on the Pat McAfee show recently saying, he's prepping a bunch, watching a bunch of film, and I'm sure he'll take a bunch of notes. Those first few games that I called, it's so easy to just get buried in your notes, and when a play happens, you go straight to your 3 bullet points that I have on Joe Jones, and it's bing, bing, bing. That's not great television either. It's good to have those nuggets. It's good to sprinkle them in, but it's more important, again, to digest what's going on in the field and then talk about it forward thinking with how that's impacting the flow of the rest of the game, or how is that play related to the play that we saw 3 plays ago, rather than getting so lost into the prep. I'm to the point now where I'll actually decrease my prep and intentionally put less notes on the page so I don't get lost on my call sheet. Second aspect is just some of the logistics. There's some just like basic color commentating principles that Tom Brady's gonna have to get used to. After a touchdown play, don't ever interrupt your play-by-play guy. Some color commentators do that. Don't interrupt your guy. Let him do his whole thing. That's his moment. That's a play-by-play guy's moment to go do his thing. Let the play breathe, especially in the NFL where you're gonna have big crowds and tons of emotion. As a color commentator, don't talk right away. That was one of the best pieces of advice that I got, because color commentators, you feel the need to talk all the time. That's an adjustment in itself, is you feel like, oh, the mic's on me, I gotta talk. Sometimes letting the play breathe and not talking is a better viewing experience, and something that I'm, still getting used to. And then 3, this might just be a Max Browne thing, but one of the biggest adjustments I had to do or had to get used to was asking questions. Interviewers make it look so easy. They make it look so conversational. But when a player comes on and you're forced to ask questions and forced to react on the fly, that's harder than it looks. The good ones make it look easy. That's not a skill set everyone can have. If you have the questions lined up and you're able to reference them, that's one thing. But just reacting on the fly, that's a different beast. And because of that, this was interesting. Bob Costas said that he thought Tom Brady should be a studio host or a studio analyst before a color commentator because there's just more on your plate as a color commentator. You are forced to drive the show. When it's the first possession and Pat Mahomes is walking out there in the Super Bowl, it is your empty canvas and you have the pen, you have the paintbrush, that's a better example, to depict the scene that you want for the viewer. That's an art. That's a skill right there. Versus a in-studio host, you are getting asked the questions and you're able to just kind of react on the fly. You're able to just kind of be an athlete, be a football player, give your 2 cents. Yes, you still have to prep, but it's a different skill set that you got to bring to the table. And I'll wrap it up here. My prediction, I think Tom Brady is going to be a phenomenal color commentator. But I also think there are going to be nuggets of criticism early on for him that he's too stiff in front of the camera. Again, I got those a little bit early on too, because you get so locked in your prep and you don't want to mess up and you get so, you're not sure exactly when the personality element should flow in and when it's okay to make a joke versus when you need to just get all the notes that you've spent the whole week on prepping for, get those out. And sometimes that can come across too stiff. Tom Brady has a great personality and you can see that in interviews, but that would be the one thing that in those first 6 games, I think he'll have to work through. But when it's all said and done, I think Tom Brady's going to crush it as a color commentator. He's got the knowledge, he's got the legacy, he's got the personality, and he's shown that he can joke with himself, which I think is just as important with anything of being on camera, the amount that he's going to be on. You're looking at one right now, a USC quarterback who did not work out in the NFL. And my situation was much different than the other guys I'm about to reference on this list, as I didn't even make it to the NFL. But I wanted to be upfront with my biases here. We're addressing the narrative, the pattern, the belief that seems to have popped up over the past 15 to 20 years that USC and Ohio State quarterbacks don't work out in the NFL. Where does this idea even come from? Part of it is that USC and Ohio State are easy to hate, just like the Celtics and the Lakers or the Yankees and the Red Sox. Like, I can admit that. Part of it may be the theory that Ryan Day and some of the old systems at USC were so much more talented than the teams they were facing that when you make the jump to the NFL, it's just a whole adjustment. And part of it is confirmation bias. Once you hear that, hey, quarterbacks from this school don't work out, then you continue to keep looking for it. Wherever it came from, the take is wrong for these 3 reasons. Our definition of bust or not working out is wrong. We don't consider either school's volume of quarterbacks. And even if you're someone who ignores those first 2 factors, there's 2 quarterbacks in this current generation that are going to put this illogical narrative finally to bed. Most fans' definition of bust or not working out is just wrong. It loses perspective. The average NFL career for a quarterback is just 4.4 years. And the bust rate for first-round quarterbacks since 2011 is basically break even. Of the 1,909 starts, the record for these quarterbacks is 1,034 and 1,035. And then we get into this whole volume conversation. Like, you have to be elite enough to have enough guys even in this conversation for this narrative to pop up, which is ridiculous. Like, when you look at USC, they have 17 quarterbacks drafted total. That's the most of any school. So like, that in itself is successful. The fact that then we go the next way of like, oh, USC quarterbacks don't work out in the NFL. Like, they're getting more at bats than any other school. They have 4 first rounders: Sam Darnold, Mark Sanchez, Matt Leinart, Carson Palmer. I'll flip the script on the other direction. I think there's a lot of positives with those guys. Carson Palmer retired as the highest earning quarterback ever. First quarterback to throw for over 4,000 yards with 3 different teams. He brought the Cardinals to the NFC Championship in 2015 and made 3 Pro Bowls. I know he was a first overall pick, but when you frame it that way, pretty good career. When you look at Mark Sanchez, we all just focus on the butt fumble. He led the Jets to the AFC Championship. He had a 10-year NFL career. Same goes for Matt Barkley. I know at one point he was like the chosen one, first-class dude, by the way, but he has an 11-year NFL career. That is a long NFL career. 11 years is not a bust, even if you're a backup. Another dude, Cody Kessler, the guy that I backed up for most of my college career. He started 11 games as a rookie. As not a day 1 NFL draft pick, to get that many starts as a rookie quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, not insignificant. But some of the negative factors that people focus on with USC are: 1, Sam Darnold. You can book this. If Sam Darnold doesn't go to the Jets straight out of the draft and he goes to the Niners instead, I think Sam Darnold could be a perennial Pro Bowl quarterback. I know that's like a hot take, but Sam has the talent. There's a reason the Panthers traded for him to get him out of there. There's a reason he was able to beat out Trey Lance in a situation where an organization, they invested a lot in Trey Lance. They invested a lot in his success, but Darnold had enough success to beat him out. There's been a lot of first-round quarterbacks that don't get these continued opportunities that Sam Darnold has, and maybe by the time you're watching this video, he's got a Super Bowl ring as well. Also, Carson Palmer. We focus on the knee and how things, ended in Cincinnati and he wasn't able to get over the hump. Well, injuries happen. Cody Kessler, he's in the Browns. Have him be in that conversation. Obviously, he wasn't a first-round quarterback or a first overall quarterback or a top 5 quarterback, but Cody Kessler, there should be no knock against Cody Kessler. I think his NFL career was great, all things considered. You look at Matt Leinart. Matt Leinart was all everything in the college game, but a lot of offensive coordinators in college, and I guess he's got to wear that. Tom Marinovich, that story's well documented. And then Mark Sanchez, again, here we go with the butt fumble. That is the clip you focus on with Mark Sanchez, but you forget he hung around the NFL for a long time and made a lot of money as a quarterback in the National Football League. On the Ohio State side of things, 14 quarterbacks drafted from the Ohio State, 4 first-rounders as well. Art Schlichter, Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud. A lot of dudes that are recent. Ohio State positive examples. They own Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, even though he was beat out by Dwayne Haskins, they can loosely claim my long-lost brother, right? Maybe not. I don't know, but I got to include him in this list. You got CJ Stroud, who we'll circle back on CJ Stroud. Talk of the town right now in football. Just had one of the top 3 rookie seasons of all time. Justin Fields. Just listen to a video right now. Justin Fields has trade value. Justin Fields is a starter in the National Football League. And Justin Fields is a quarterback that's got his own fan base chanting his name. There's belief in who Justin Fields is right now. And then Mike Tomczyk. Gonna be honest, had to fact check here. Started 73 games in the NFL and threw for over 16,000 yards in his career. But on the negative side, where this narrative takes life for Ohio State, you got Troy Smith. Big-time college career, heard nothing from him in the NFL. JT Barrett. Big-time college career, nothing in the NFL. He's the homie though. Terrell Pryor. Huge recruit, successful college career, wasn't able to transition into the NFL. Well, what could have been with Terrell Pryor if he was in a different era of football? Ultimately, had to go to receiver, which I feel like only adds fuel to this fire and fuel to this narrative. But those are 3 dudes that were big-time college quarterbacks that don't work out in the NFL. You also have Art Schlichter, who had the gambling issue that got publicity that's no fun, and so he gets added to this list. You got Cardell Jones. He just didn't play that much football in college to really have success in the NFL, but only started 11 games in college. Like, that's going to be tough to find a career in the NFL. And then the late Dwayne Haskins, RIP, started 13 games for Washington in 2 seasons, and it never really worked out in his time in Pittsburgh with Big Ben and Mason Rudolph, and obviously a horrible news with his passing. But that gives you context to just the amount of names that I think should work to the school's quarterback pedigree in a more positive way that from an NFL lens ultimately works against him. And for me, the biggest question is, not even the topic of this video, but why do great college quarterbacks ultimately not work out in the NFL? The first factor right away, dysfunctional franchise. Sam Darnold's the perfect example. Goes to the Jets, not a great scenario. Not the pieces in place around him to have success. And as a result of that, especially when you have expectations, you start feeling like you need to play like Superman. You start feeling like you need to be the dude all the time. You start feeling like you need to start playing like the number 3 draft pick every single play. When great quarterbacks look no further than what Brock Purdy's doing, what Tom Brady made a career on, you take what's in front of you. You go to a dysfunctional franchise, it's not a recipe for success. The current style of offense, that's another factor. I think especially with the Ohio State guys that were more dual threat guys, they could have had more success in a different era of football. For the USC guys, I also think it's interesting because, some of those guys are on the wavelength of as the game went more dual threat and they were more pro-style system to start. That's an interesting dynamic as well of, they were great in a certain scheme, but then the game was moving away from that scheme. And then the factor that we all lose track of that is never sexy to talk about, but football is the ultimate team sport. To have success, you have to have the right coach in place, the right teammates in place. You have to have a run game. You have to have an offensive line. You have to have a defense. Maybe you don't need all of them, but you need some of them. And if the pieces don't come in together and you start losing confidence, and again, you start having to feel like you need to play like Superman, that's where negative momentum can stack up against you. And before you know it, the margins are this thin and you're not in the NFL. But the reason I'm making this video is because once and for all, I think we are approaching a time period where this narrative will finally be put to bed. One, because of CJ Stroud, coming off a huge rookie year. Looks like he should have been the first pick in the NFL draft last year ahead of Bryce Young, but not even going down that route. He looks like he's about to have a successful decade-long career playing at an all-pro level. And on the other side, you got Caleb Williams about to enter the NFL. The best prospect we've seen since Andrew Luck. The most talented dude. I think the Bears would be foolish to not take him number one. I think he's going to find success. I think he's so talented that he can rise up a dysfunctional franchise. And if we're sitting here 5 years from now, I don't think this is a hot take. There's a very real scenario. If we fast forward 5 years and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are phasing out, that next wave, that next duo, that next matchup could be CJ Stroud versus Caleb Williams. It could be Ohio State versus USC, and this narrative will be finally put to bed that Buckeye quarterbacks and USC quarterbacks, they don't work out in the NFL. Because it's a stupid narrative anyways, and CJ and Caleb put on for all of us. That wraps up this episode of the Max Browne Show. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Let me know in the comments down below what was your favorite segment, and also let me know what's hitting for you. What do you like? Yo, Max, this is why I'm coming and checking out your content. And then on the other side, what's the reason that you're like, you know what, this is just we're not doing this right, fam? And I'll fix it as well. We got a lot of room for improvement. But I appreciate you guys hanging out. If you've made it this far, consider hitting the subscribe and like button down below. And with that, I'll see you guys next week. Peace.